Dontaesboxingnation, Dontaescookingnation. We out here. Where are we at?
We're out here in Bangkok.
There you go. She's from Ireland. Matter of fact, introduce yourself to the world.
My name's Hannah and I'm from Ireland and I'm the biggest fan of Cooking Show.
You hear that?
Yeah.
Biggest fan?
And I'm from Ireland. Sorry.
No, I can edit it. Don't worry about it. All the way in Bangkok, Thailand, y'all.
No,
I'm gonna get
in
it right.
Ireland as well.
In Ireland, you hear that? DBN is international,
My
guys.
churros are ready now.
Canelo, you said you'll be interested in fighting Jake Paul. Do you think Jake Paul is better than Demetrius Andre?
No. No worse. Hey,
Just go home.
don't do that. Get the fight, man. Go home.
Compete me then. Compete me.
Horrible.
Compete me. Compete me, bro.
Dontaesboxingnation, what's going on, guys? So first things first, shout out to my reporter who's covering the fight out there for me and asking all of the questions the right way that I actually gave him to ask at the press conference and everything else. And also, I really appreciate the people in charge of the credentials that took care of a small problem we had, because for whatever reason, they end up putting my name on the credentials as opposed to putting my reporter's name on the credentials list. So he had a problem just for a brief time. They wouldn't let him in. That was the other day at the Grand Arrivals, but after about 15 to 20 minutes, the problem was taken care of. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this news about Canelo. So the pound for pound best fighter in the world against white/European fighters, Canelo Alvarez, or maybe the new name is Canelo Payday Alvarez. We got Floyd Money Mayweather, and now we got Canelo Payday Alvarez. He just got called out by a real pound for pound best fighter in the world, but on the MMA side, Kamaru Usman, a man who ain't ducking nobody, a man who's fighting the best fighters no matter what their race is. Now, before I play the clip of what Kamaru Usman said by calling out Canelo Alvarez, I gotta put all this in chronological order for you. Now remember, when Canelo Alvarez was being called out by Demetrius Andre, a man that he has been avoiding for 6 years, from 154 to 160 and now 168. When Andrade invaded his press conference, Canelo Alvarez, he started to use code words to describe Demetrius Andrade, code words like horrible fighter and payday, right? Well, coincidentally, Jake Paul, he calls out Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo entertains the Jake Paul fight. He says he would be interested in that fight. But then when pound for pound, the best UFC fighter in the world, Usman calls him out, he goes back to the code words, payday. Usman wants a payday. But guys, this is the same fighter who also said he would be interested in a Conor McGregor fight after he and De La Hoya criticized Floyd Mayweather for taking the Conor McGregor fight. By the way, Oscar desperately called out Conor as well after they seen how successful the event was with Floyd Mayweather, of course. Now, this is where I want to address you Canelo Alvarez fans, because you guys are always in my comment section saying, oh, Canelo is just trying to do the same things that Floyd Mayweather did. He's doing everything that Floyd Mayweather did. Okay, guys, if that is the case, when Floyd Mayweather, when he fought Conor McGregor, Floyd was the best fighter in boxing, and Conor McGregor was one of the best fighters in MMA, right? Some would say he was pound for pound the best in MMA. So if Canelo Alvarez is trying to be like Mike, aka Floyd Mayweather, why is he willing to make a payday with Jake Paul and not willing to make a payday with the best fighter in the world in UFC? Does that make any sense to you guys? Of course it doesn't, because that's a rhetorical question. What's crazier about this is Canelo Alvarez has a major, massive advantage over Usman, right? Because with Floyd Mayweather, he was fighting against Conor McGregor, a guy who actually had a lot of amateur fights. In fact, a lot of people didn't know this, but Conor McGregor, he was an amateur fighter with a gang of fights before he became an MMA fighter. So he had boxing experience. Usman has no boxing experience. He only has stand-up experience, which is nowhere near the same thing. So Usman would be at a massive disadvantage going up against Canelo. And yet Canelo Alvarez is still intimidated. Because I'm gonna tell you the translation, you guys already know what it is. Even the racists know what the translation is. They're just gonna stay on code. Of course, they're not gonna say it in the comment section. But all these code words Canelo Alvarez is using, payday, horrible fighter, all it means is these are some dangerous ass black fighters that are gonna be very difficult to beat. I'm gonna stick with fighting against these European/white fighters because they guarantee me a win. Until one of those dangerous black fighters start looking extremely vulnerable and beatable, and then it's time to get in the ring with them. This is not up for debate. That's exactly what it means. Because if it didn't mean that, Canelo would not have a double standard when he says it, right? If Payday didn't mean that, he would be saying that for other fighters that were not on the coincidental list. If he would have said Jake Paul is looking for a payday, if he would have said Yildirim is looking for a payday, if he would have said Rocky Fielding, if he would have said these guys are looking for paydays, then he would have been consistent, right? But he has been completely inconsistent, and he has made it very obvious who he feels meets that criteria of being a quote-unquote horrible fighter/payday wanting fighter. When Canelo Alvarez was pursuing Floyd Mayweather for over a year, maybe a good 2 years, when he was pursuing Floyd, all these videos I made about Canelo, have you ever heard me accuse Canelo of wanting a payday? You guys have never heard me say that, right? And at the time, Canelo had fought nobody. I didn't even make a video saying, who has he fought? Who has Canelo fought? You've never heard me say that before because I wanted to see the fight. And at that time, when Floyd Mayweather wasn't really mentioning Canelo's name, a lot of Mexican fans and basically Canelo fans were in my comment section, and they were saying to me that Floyd Mayweather is scared. He's scared of Floyd Mayweather. He's ducking him. I always tell this story, but it's funny. I remember, my kids, they box, and I remember one of my sons, he told me that he went to school one day, and this was right after Floyd had beat, I don't know, it was Guerrero. He had beat somebody. And he said, the Mexican kid in this class, he said, yeah, but he's scared to fight Canelo. And that's what he told him, right? This is once again before the fight was even talked about, right? And you never heard me say, who has Canelo fought? Canelo's biggest claim to fame today is losing to Floyd Mayweather. Canelo's legacy will not look like a Floyd Mayweather's legacy, an Ali legacy, or even an Oscar De La Hoya legacy, because a lot of the other greats, their biggest claim to fame was getting a big win over a signature rival, right? Once again, Sugar Ray Leonard. He's considered one of the greatest of all time because of the names that are attached to his legacy, to his resume. But that's not the case with Canelo. With Canelo, it's losing the biggest fights of his career and winning the biggest fights of his career with controversy. Those are his biggest wins of his career. Canelo Alvarez keeps saying he's gotten way better since it looked like he had problems with slick boxers, et cetera, et cetera. But yet every time we watch him fight someone who has half the skills of some of these slick boxers, he struggles against them. He was outboxed by Amir Khan. He was outboxed by Kovalev. He was outboxed by BJ Saunders. And he will be outboxed for at least the first half against Caleb Plant. I would be very, very surprised if he does not look the way he looked against Billy Joe Saunders. I've already told you guys, this is not up for debate. Even DAZN commentators who are the biggest fans of Canelo, They had Canelo down in that fight 5-1 against BJ Saunders. Okay? Now, I know right now a whole lot of Canelo Alvarez fans, they're crying. They already ran and got the Kleenex. They slapping their knee, rolling around, breaking their cell phones as they listen to this video, because this truth ain't no joke and it's breaking your heart. I know you're going to sit over here and say, hey, man, their scorecards doesn't matter because I said that Canelo won every round. It was easy. Yeah, you could say that. Hell, you could even say that Canelo is pound for pound the best fighter in the world, even though he's only been fighting against white/European fighters in the last 2 years. Just because you say it, it doesn't make it true. It's what Canelo does in the ring that makes it true. But you still cannot explain why did they, all of a sudden, all the fights that Canelo was in, why this fight in particular, did Sergio Mora and Chris Mannix have Canelo down 5-1? They didn't have him down in the Caleb Smith fight. They didn't have him down in the Yildirim fight. They didn't have him down like that in the Kovalev fight, even though that was another fight that Kovalev was doing very well in outboxing him until he got knocked out. Why did they have Canelo down in this fight in particular? There can only be one logical explanation, and that was because they were using their damn eyes when they were watching the fight. But really, it's credit to Sergio Mora, because he set the tone. See, Sergio Mora is not racist and as biased as the rest of the panel over there when it comes to Chris Mannix and whatever his name is, Grisham, last name Grisham. I believe it's Todd Grisham. When Sergio Mora calls the fight, he's just talking boxing. He doesn't have an agenda. So when he says something off code that makes a lot of sense, it kind of puts pressure on Grisham and Chris Mannix to be more honest, because they don't want to come out looking biased when someone like Sergio Mora is speaking the truth. And it looks like it makes sense, right? So after Mora was the first person to say that Canelo was down in this fight, Chris Mannix, who is DAZN's unofficial judge, which that puts even more pressure on him. You really don't want to look biased when you're supposed to be considered an unofficial judge. He also had the fight scored the same way that Mora had it scored, right? You cannot explain that. Once again, you can sit over here and tell us, how you had it. But once again, you guys keep saying that Canelo Alvarez is trying to be like Floyd. So why isn't he trying to do the same things Floyd Mayweather did then? And trust me, I've already made long videos breaking down the dichotomy between the two when it comes to what Floyd has done and what Canelo has done. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch it. I got to find the video on my own channel because I forgot the title, but it's something like Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo Alvarez legacy status or something like that. But if you haven't watched that video, it's a great complete breakdown. It answers all your questions, all your concerns, for all you decafs with the ridiculous talking points that make no sense at all. I debunked all of that. It's a long 25, 30-minute video. I'm talking about comparing Canelo to Floyd Mayweather's career, with them being at the same age, all the way from them turning pro to where Canelo is today. Because that's how you make a real comparison. You don't compare the 30-year-old Canelo to the 38-year-old Floyd Mayweather. No, you compare the 30-year-old Floyd to the 30-year-old Canelo, so on and so forth. That's how you do it. With that being said, man, credit to Usman, a man who's willing to put himself at a disadvantage. The man said he's scared. You know what I'm saying? He said it scares him, which is motivation, because he knows that he's out of his element if he comes over to jump into a complete new sport that he has no experience in. That is the mindset of a person who truly believes he's pound for pound the best fighter in the world. He's willing to take risk. He's willing to even lose if he has to, right? Canelo doesn't have that type of mindset. This is why Canelo right now is only fighting against white/European fighters, because he personally believes they are weaker, and they will guarantee him a win that he feels certain undefeated, well, not certain undefeated black fighters today won't. Although I've already told you, now since Jamal Charlo has looked horrible in his last fight and he's never looked that bad, then there may be a very good chance that he will take that fight down. But the question is, why didn't he take the fight 6 years ago when he didn't have a belt and both Charlos had a belt and they were both calling him out? Why didn't he take the fight then? Why didn't he take it at 160 when Jamal Charlo was his mandatory and he decided to vacate and give up the belt? And I'm going to keep educating you Canelo Alvarez fans that like to say, hey man, that's not true, because Jermell Charlo, he even said that Jamal ducked Canelo Alvarez. And with that, all I have to do is ask you this question. If he ducked Canelo Alvarez, how does a mandatory, how does he end up with the champion's belt after ducking the champion? Explain that. Why did Canelo Alvarez vacate his belt if his mandatory did not want to fight him? Have you ever in your life heard Canelo say, I want Jamal Charlo? We've heard Canelo say, I want Billy Joe Saunders. We've heard him say, I want Caleb Smith. We've heard him push for the Yildirim fight. We've heard him want Kovalev. He has never said on an interview or quoted on an article as saying he wants to fight Jamal Charlo. He gave up his belt. So I don't care if Jamal's mom said he ducked Canelo Alvarez. How do you explain Jamal ending up with the champion's belt? He was his mandatory. If that's the case, Ryan Garcia was Devin Haney's mandatory. So that means Ryan should have Devin Haney's belt right now, right? How come Devin Haney didn't vacate his belt? And all of a sudden we see Ryan with it. And coincidentally, it's the same organization, the WBC belt. We know what time it is. Listen, I'm gonna close out with saying this. This video is not to suggest that Canelo is obligated to fight against Usman. It's basically to point out the double standard in the translation of what payday and horrible fighter means. We know what time it is. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
My name is Chris, and I'm all the way here from Anchorage, Alaska at ScalpCarolinas, and I'm here for my second treatment of SMP. Well, I was sitting at home one day and going over my Facebook page, and they have different, like advertisements popping up, and I saw one for SMP. And I saw some pictures of some guys, before and after, and I was looking at that, and it caught my attention. So I Googled it, SMP, nothing showed up in my area. So, I did a little more research, and all of a sudden, ScalpCarolinas popped up in the web browser. So I started watching his videos and seeing all the reaction from all the other people. We talked on the phone, we made appointments and everything. I sent him pictures, and he looked at them, and I was like, can you fix this? And he pretty much said, no problem. My first session, he made me feel extremely comfortable. It was almost like I was talking to family. He started, and during the whole treatment, we talked and about our families and our life, and and things that he does and things that I do. And before I know it, the first session was over. When you see someone doing something that they love, as much as I see Enoch Glover love what he does, it shows in his work. I wouldn't point anyone in any other direction but here to North Carolina, ScalpCarolinas, to get this done.
All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.